We have 650 million school-going children in our continent. It tells you that a huge percentage of Africans are in school, and therefore education becomes a very important tool for shaping the African continent, the African human capital, and use it to drive our own development. It is the reason why countries like Kenya, we spend $5 billion every year on education, because education is important. And for us to meet the targets that we have for ourselves, whether it is economic targets, whether it is targets on climate change, whether it is targets on food security, on health, we must focus on the youth, and the majority of them are in school, and therefore education becomes front and center of what Africa becomes in the future. Africa is going to be defined by the quality of education that we offer to our young people, and that is why the focus in this AU is apt. It is actually the right place to focus. It is the reason why I am very clear in my mind that investing in education, in skills development, in upskilling, making sure that we broaden so that we have an array of tools, all the way from what the conventional methods of education, all the way to artificial intelligence. I think that array is significant for us. And it is one asset that Africa must deploy. In a world where the rest of the continents are aging, we have an advantage to deploy our human capital to influence global trends. It really doesn't matter. You know, the end justifies the means. What we need is a new thinking. What we need is new ideas, innovation around the kind of education that will get us where we want to go. And we have to deploy every tool that we have. We have to deploy every strategy that we can get. And whether we get the money from the World Bank, whether it comes from our own resources. And this morning, we had a very candid conversation about Africa's multilateral development financial institutions. And we are saying, the same way we are having a conversation about the international financial architecture, it must start with a conversation about the African institutions, whether we are talking about Afrexim Bank, Africa Development Bank, Trade Development Bank, and all the other institutions that are African. And we are making a conscious decision that, number one, we are going to capitalize these institutions. Countries like Kenya, for example, we have bought more shares in Afrexim Bank. We have bought more shares in Trade Development Bank. We now want to move it to scale up their capital so that they become more attractive, number one. Number two, we want to make these institutions agents or agencies of the Africa Union, to give them legitimacy, to give them recognition, to put a stamp of approval on them that they represent our continent. And much more importantly, we are making a conscious decision that we want 30% of all our reserves that today are in all manner of banks, in all manner of capitals, to be in these institutions so that we give them legitimacy. Number two, we are not leaving the international financial institutions alone. We have made a serious push, and I am very happy today that what started like it was, a contest between North and South, today everybody agrees that there is something fundamentally wrong about the global financial architecture. And everybody has agreed that we need reform. And we are not going to leave it there. We're going to take it to the next level. Kenya, for example, is participating with Germany, with France, and Colombia, and Barbados on that reform. And we are going to bring in ideas on a couple of things. Number one, we're going to bring ideas on debt management. How do we increase the tenure of debt? How do we increase the grace period of debt? And how do we have clauses that prevent or that support African countries whenever they are in trouble? How do we have debt pause clauses, for example, and many other avenues? Number two, how do we promote responsible credit rating? How do we responsible foreign sovereign debt? How do we promote it? How do we make sure that the credit rating agencies do their job without bias? How do we make sure that assessment of risk is not biased? How do we make sure that debt sustainability is not biased? These are ideas we're going to put on the table. We think that we've gotten the short end of the stick for too long, and it is because we didn't step forward with our own ideas, our own suggestions, and this time round we are saying we are putting our best foot forward.